Oh boy, we're doing this again? Let's just get this over with. Great, awesome, daily, baby mop life helps you. Inventions, baby mop, baby mop, baby mop. Awesome. Number two, it's terrible, baby mop. You happy now? 1860 Civil War inventions. Welp, I just got done making a Halloween episode. Now I gotta finish this episode in like a week. So as you can probably tell, I'm dead inside. But it's all good in the hood. Don't worry about me, no matter how few hours of sleep I get. But now is not the time to be baby moping around, since today's a very special day. It's the 1-year anniversary of That's Odd. In like a month. I'm a month early, but next month it will be. It's not my fault this project's due date didn't line up perfectly. Maybe I'll make an anniversary video if I hate myself enough, but for this Hendeca Mesaversary, we're gonna revisit the greatest topic on this channel. But 11 years in future, to 1861, the Civil War. Now, I'm not here to explain the entire Civil War to y'all, since I'm pretty sure you can do that from going to a library or something. But I know you only go there for the free Wi-Fi and printer ink. Stuff's expensive, man. So I'll just explain it in the simplest terms possible. So slavery was a thing, and the North was like, we don't need it. But then the South was like, well, we do. And then there was tension between them until Abraham Lincoln appeared. And the South was like, we're gonna blow up your fort. And the North was like, dang it. So that's how the Civil War began. Hey, if anyone needs a history teacher, I'm available. And from that point on, the North and South were bitter rivals and thousands of people died. But it's all good, since I can talk more about baby mops. I know y'all like baby mops, you pedophiles.
Number 5.
Everyone hates having the power of things by hand. It's terrible, but Antonio Pacinotti is here to save the day with his improved take on the Dynamo in 1860, right before the war, which is simply a cool sounding word for an electrical generator. Of course, Mr. Mozart Grover Cleveland here was not American, dude was from Italy. You can still imagine how this technology would suddenly magically appear in the United States. Because back in the Industrial Revolution, the US just loved to steal new factory equipment from the East and remake them from scratch in their own country. Speaking of the Industrial Revolution, the dynamo was probably used in factories to power machines within them, which of course would make all the supplies that the soldiers needed during the Civil War, if I really need to tie this all together. Oh, and also, I have a video on the Industrial Revolution. You should really check that one out because that one's also got more inventions in it, and I also need more views to boost my self-esteem.
Number 4.
1862, Alexander Parks creates Parkinson, which is not Parkinson's disease. That's completely different. This is not some sort of create the disease, sell the cure situation. That's messed up. And 1863, John Wesley Hyatt creates Celluloid, which is like Parkinson, but with a simplified manufacturing process. What are these, you ask? Well, Peter Parker's son and Cellotape are both plastic. This was a time way before the plastic bag challenge could plague the world with its stupidity. Because, really? Anyway, this plastic was more of an alternative to ivory, not like actual plastic. I think that's World War II territory. Being used mainly in things like dice, billiard balls, and piano keys. This unfortunately means that it wasn't an invention that super affected the Civil War, since as I'm sure you can guess, Civil War soldiers didn't usually throw pianos at people too often. You also can't really shoot a gun made out of plastic, since it will probably just burst into flames once you pull the trigger. If anything, you'd probably use the plastic to shoot the bullet, seeing as nitrocellulose is flammable enough to be used as a propellant, getting the name gun cotton. But soldiers did play dice games, which were made out of this plastic, so I guess it had some use. But the takeaway here is that this led the way for modern use of plastic, which is one of the most important and abundant materials we use today. Probably for the worse.
Number 3.
When you wake up in the morning, what do you eat? Waffles, breakfast bagel bites, an entire rotisserie chicken, you know, the huge. But I'll tell you this, you probably don't eat granola cereal unless you hate having a tongue to eat things or are a billion gajillion years old. In fact, cereal is pretty old. It made it all the way back right in the middle of the Civil War in 1863 by Dr. James Caleb Jackson with medical school knowledge and his own water therapy spa, for Christ's sake, which eventually caught on fire. How ironic. Jackson was a nut over healthy diets. And his idea of a healthy diet was fruits and veggies, yada yada yada. It's good for you. Okay, Mom, I get it. And the important part, grains. That's like cereal and stuff. So Jackson made a cereal called Granola, which was made out of flour, and that's it, just flour. This guy was basically a medical expert, to remind you. Now, as much as this sounds like a terrible, tasteless army food, it wasn't. This was a product made to be eaten inside the houses of the middle class, even if it pretty much was just tiny bits of hardtack, which was the kind of food that soldiers in the Civil War had to eat. It was nothing but flour and water, and it was this hard cracker type thing. Either way, lesson is, no matter how much flour is used in cake, flour is not cake.
Number 2.
Still sticking to 1863, J.J. Richardson invented the socket wrench, or ratcheting socket wrench if you're more of a Lombax kind of guy, which is a wrench. But not these kind of wrenches. These are boring wrenches. But you know, like those kind of wrenches that you find in your dad's toolbox when you're like 10 years old and you start twirling around and around and around until you accidentally stab your eyeball hole? Yeah, those. So these wrenches were specifically made to fasten nuts and bolts, which could be used for like wagon or medical cart wheels in the Civil War, which kind of played like a big part in the Civil War. These carts were the origins of ambulances, as they went around the battlefield with surgeons inside of them who would, you know, casually chop off people's legs and arms. I mean, mostly because that's all they could really do in that situation. But back on track. You can't really drive a cart if you're missing like half of your wheels. So that's what you need a socket wrench for. Or you could just put the car into two-wheel drive.
Number 1.
Ooh, this one's important. I'm using one of these right now, because that's odd fact number 284. I write all my scripts on a typewriter. Made a whole 3 years after the Civil War, during the Reconstruction era, which mainly consisted of attempting to get the South back together with the newly unified United States. Christopher Latham Sholes, Carlos Glidden, and Samuel W. Soule made the half-appropriately named Sholes and Glidden typewriter, which was faster and slimmer than most other typewriters at the time, but it was a hard sell. Nobody wanted to buy this thing, which is understandable. The typewriter also set the trend of QWERTY keyboards, which are still in use today. So after the Civil War, you can imagine how these were used, to type out and send messages as a way of communication. And obviously, after a country just split into two for half a decade, you're probably going to want some communication. This communication was in the form of books, newspapers, and other media, as it eliminated the need for having to use a printing press to print out letters one by one. Good lordy, this came out after the Civil War. Imagine the headlines if it wasn't. 620,000 dead. Ugh. But it is pretty surreal to see how this 2-century-old technology still survived to this day. Like kids' cereal, modern plastic, and the keyboard. It just goes to show how helpful in daily life these old inventions are. So, in the end, they're all cool in my books. What in the world? Wait a minute. Baby mop. Baby mop? Never mind, it's not cool in my books anymore. Everyone hates having to power things by hand. It's terrible. But, oh shoot, I didn't research how to say this name beforehand.